The parking lot was almost empty when Sandra Bullock finally stepped outside after a long and exhausting day on set. Her shoulders felt heavy from hours of emotional scenes, and she wanted nothing more than to sit in silence and breathe. But as she walked toward her car, she suddenly stopped. Her eyes narrowed slowly, unsure if she was imagining it. Inside her car, resting calmly on the dashboard, was a single white flower. It sat there as if someone had placed it with great care, its soft petals glowing under the dim yellow parking light. There was no note, no ribbon, no sign of who put it there, just a quiet flower waiting for her. For a moment she felt unsure. A small worry touched her heart as she looked around. The trailers were dark, the crew had already left, and the only sound was the low hum of a generator in the distance. She walked closer, each step filling her with a mix of curiosity and confusion. The flower did not feel threatening. It felt gentle, almost peaceful, and that made her even more unsure about what to think. She opened the car door slowly and sat down, letting the familiar scent of her car mix with the fresh smell of the petals. She picked up the flower, turning it gently in her hand. It was simple and beautiful, but its meaning was a mystery. Sandra leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment. This week had been difficult. She had been carrying stress quietly, pretending to be fine around the crew, pushing through scenes even when her heart felt tired. She had told no one how overwhelmed she was feeling. Yet this small flower appearing out of nowhere touched something deep inside her. It made her feel seen in a way she could not explain. She wondered who would do this. She thought about the makeup artist, the assistant, some kind crew member, maybe even a fan. But none of those possibilities felt right. Her mind kept returning to one person without her wanting it to. Keanu. She shook her head softly. Keanu was kind, yes, maybe one of the kindest people she knew. He always supported others, always noticed when someone was struggling, but leaving a flower without saying a word felt unusual even for him. Still, something about the silence of the gesture, the simplicity, made her think of him. She placed the flower on the passenger seat and started the car. As she drove forward, she glanced at the rearview mirror and felt her breath pause for a second. Near the exit of the parking lot, under a street light, a motorcycle was waiting. The rider sat completely still, hands relaxed on the handlebars, helmet hiding the face. Sandra's heart gave a small jump. She recognized that posture instantly. Calm, patient, familiar, she slowed slightly as she approached. When she passed the motorcycle, the rider turned his head just a little. Through the helmet visor, she saw a pair of soft, warm eyes. He nodded gently, almost shyly, and that was all. No words, no gesture asking for attention, just quiet kindness, the kind she remembered so well. As she drove into the street, her thoughts stayed with that moment. Keanu had been watching over her the entire day. He had helped her through scenes, supported her with small smiles, and listened when she needed a moment to breathe. He had always done that even years ago when she had given him something small on a difficult day. A memory stirred inside her, faint but familiar, though she could not fully recall it yet. She wondered if he remembered it more clearly than she did. When she reached home, the night felt softer. She took the flower with her and placed it in a small glass of water, setting it by the window where the moonlight touched it. The gentle glow made her smile for the first time that evening. Before going to bed, she sent Keanu a simple message. She wrote, "Thank you for being kind today." She did not mention the flower, and she did not ask any questions. After a few minutes, her phone vibrated with his reply. It said, "Always here if you need anything." Those simple words rested in her heart as she fell asleep. She did not know yet that this flower was only the beginning of something quietly beautiful, something that would become one of the sweetest memories she would ever share with Keanu Reeves. The next morning arrived slower than usual for Sandra. She woke up with the soft white flower still fresh in her mind. The memory of the motorcycle, the quiet nod, and the warm eyes behind the visor followed her into the day like a gentle whisper. She tried not to think too much about it, but the truth was simple. The moment had stayed with her longer than she expected. She got ready for work, placed the flower carefully on her windowsill, and stepped outside with a strange, calm feeling in her chest. When she arrived on set, the usual chaos of the morning greeted her. People rushed across the lot with coffee cups, scripts, cables, and equipment. Makeup artists were already arranging their brushes, and the assistant directors were shouting schedules. But something felt slightly different today, at least to her. For the first time all week, she felt lighter. She felt like someone had quietly placed a hand on her shoulder and told her she was doing okay, even when she felt tired inside. Her trailer was already open when she reached it. She walked in, expecting the usual stack of scripts and morning notes from the director. But the moment she stepped inside, her breath caught. On top of her script, placed neatly like a gentle secret, was another white flower. This one looked just as fresh and soft as the one she found in her car. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at it. There was still no note, still no explanation, just silence, pure, quiet silence. She sat down on the small couch inside the trailer and held the flower in her hand. The room felt still. The thought that someone was watching over her returned, stronger now. She looked around carefully. The trailer door had been locked. No one but trusted crew had access, yet someone had come in early enough to place the flower before she arrived. Someone who knew her schedule. Someone who knew she would see it immediately. Her first instinct was again to think of Keanu, but she had seen him only for a brief moment earlier that morning, far across the lot, speaking with a stunt coordinator. He looked calm, focused, but there was nothing in his expression that suggested he had done something unusual. If anything, he seemed deliberately normal, almost careful. That only made her more suspicious. Keanu was never showy, he never tried to get attention. If he did something kind, he often hid it behind small habits, quiet timing, and gentle smiles. But was he really the one doing this? Or was she imagining connections that did not exist? She placed the flower inside her bag and stood up, telling herself she would not jump to conclusions. She would ask the crew first. She walked toward the makeup area where two assistants were preparing brushes. She kept her voice light as she asked, "Did either of you leave a flower in my trailer this morning?" Both shook their heads immediately. One of them even laughed softly and said they wished they had time for such gestures. The other joked that they could barely manage their caffeine, let alone flowers. Sandra thanked them and walked away. She asked 3 more people throughout the morning, a costume assistant, a lighting technician, and even the production runner who often delivered messages. All of them denied it. None of their reactions felt suspicious. No one had that tiny pause, that delayed breath, that nervous smile people usually show when they hide something small. So if not them, then who? The question lingered in her mind as she went through the day's scenes. She tried to focus on her lines, the camera angles, and the director's notes. But every now and then, her eyes drifted toward where Keanu stood. He was calm as always, moving quietly between takes, helping a crew member lift equipment, giving space where needed, offering support when someone looked stressed. He acted normal, completely normal. There was no sign at all that he had done something unusual for her. But she also remembered something important. The kindest people rarely left clues when they wanted their kindness to stay invisible. Later that afternoon, Sandra stepped into the break area for a few minutes of fresh air. She leaned against a railing and watched the sunlight fall gently across the lot. The breeze felt cool against her skin. She closed her eyes for a moment, just breathing, when she sensed someone approach from her right side. She opened her eyes and saw Keanu standing near her, holding a cup of tea. He did not look at her immediately. He simply stood beside her, sharing the quiet without forcing a conversation. After a few seconds, he finally said in a soft voice, "You doing okay today?" Sandra felt her chest tighten slightly. Of all the things he could ask, he asked the one question she needed the most. She looked at him carefully, trying to read his expression. His face was calm, warm, but hard to decipher. He always kept a peaceful expression, even when he felt deeply. She answered, "Better than yesterday, I think." He nodded gently, still looking at the horizon. "Good," he said quietly. "You deserve some ease." His words carried a softness that made her heart shift. The way he said it, the tone, the sincerity, made her wonder again about the flowers. She wanted to ask him directly. She wanted to say, "Keanu, are you the one leaving them?" But something inside her stopped the words. Maybe part of her did not want the mystery solved yet. Maybe she wanted to understand the intention, not just the answer. They stood together for a moment longer before he walked away slowly, giving her another gentle nod. She watched him leave, and her hand brushed the flower inside her bag. Something about the timing felt too perfect, too meaningful, and yet she had no proof. As she prepared for her evening scenes, the thought kept echoing inside her chest. This was not random. It was not a coincidence. Someone understood her silence better than she expected. Someone was paying attention. But she had no idea that the next flower, the third one, would appear at the exact moment she needed comfort the most. And that moment would bring her closer to the truth she had been searching for. The third day began with heavy clouds in the sky and an even heavier feeling inside Sandra. She reached the set early, hoping a quiet morning would help her prepare for the emotional scene scheduled for the afternoon. But from the moment she arrived, nothing felt steady. The air felt thick, the crew seemed rushed, and her own mind would not stay still. She kept replaying the moment with Keanu from the day before, the softness of his voice and the quiet care in his eyes. She kept wondering what he knew, what he noticed, and why he seemed to appear exactly when she felt weakest. As the morning passed, her heart kept drifting to the flowers, the first one in her car, the second one in her trailer. She could not stop her thoughts from circling around the same question. Who was doing this? But today she felt something extra, something deeper. An emotion she could not fully describe. It felt like someone was trying to speak to her without using words. The director called her in for rehearsals, and she tried to shake the thoughts away. She wanted to give her best performance. The scene demanded raw emotion, and she had prepared for it, but something inside her was not ready. As the cameras set up and the lights adjusted, she felt her chest tighten. She took her position, breathed in slowly, and tried to clear her mind. Keanu stood nearby, waiting for his cue in the same scene. He gave her a small, reassuring smile, the kind that always reached his eyes. The first take began. Sandra tried to pull herself into the character's emotional journey, but her voice cracked too early. The director paused and told her to take a moment. She nodded and tried again. The second take was worse. She felt her emotions tangled, not flowing, not reachable. Something inside her was blocking her performance, something she could not unpack fast enough. She tried a third time, but this time her hands trembled and her throat tightened so much she could barely speak. The director sighed softly and called for a short break. Sandra stepped off the set quickly, her face warm with embarrassment, her heartbeat uneven. She walked behind one of the large sound barriers where she hoped no one would follow. As soon as she was alone, she placed her hands on her knees and took a deep breath. She felt overwhelmed, frustrated, and strangely close to tears. She did not like failing in front of the crew. She did not like feeling weak where people depended on her strength. She leaned against the wall, letting her eyes close. In that moment of quiet, she felt the weight of the entire week rush over her. The pressure, the long hours, the exhaustion she had been pretending not to feel. She whispered to herself, almost too softly to hear, "I just need one moment." She did not know Keanu had seen her walk away. He had paused mid-step, concern filling his face, but he did not follow immediately. He understood boundaries. He understood the need for space. Instead, he stood far enough not to intrude, but close enough to be there if she needed him. When Sandra returned to the set, she forced a small smile. She told the director she was ready for another try, even though her chest still felt heavy. The scene continued for the next hour, but her performance remained shaky. At one point, she noticed Keanu watching her with quiet worry. He did not say anything, but his eyes held a kind of understanding that made her want to sit down and cry. Finally, the director called a lunch break. Sandra left the set quietly and walked toward her car just to sit alone for a moment. She unlocked the door, opened it, and froze completely. There was a third white flower lying gently on her driver's seat. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at it. The petals were fresh, soft, untouched. Someone had placed it with intention, not by accident. Someone had known she would come here. Someone had understood that she needed comfort more than anything else in that exact moment. She stepped inside slowly and picked up the flower with trembling fingers. Her eyes softened, and an unexpected warmth filled her chest. She felt her entire body loosen, as if the simple kindness inside that flower released the tightness she had been carrying since morning. She whispered, "Why now? How did you know?" The timing was too perfect. Someone had watched her struggle. Someone had cared enough to act instantly. She closed her eyes and let a tear fall quietly, not from sadness, but from relief. This was no longer coincidence. This was no random act. Someone understood her pain more deeply than she expected. Someone was watching her with the kind of care that did not demand attention or credit. She thought of Keanu again. She remembered how he had looked at her earlier, how he had paused when she walked away, how he had seemed to understand she was close to breaking. He always noticed the small things. He always listened even when she did not speak. But a part of her still wondered, if it was him, why would he keep it a secret? What was he afraid of, or what meaning did the flowers hold for him? She placed the flower on her lap and breathed slowly. The world felt quieter now, softer. She wiped her eyes and looked out through the windshield. Across the lot, she saw Keanu walking with the stunt coordinator again. He was calm, composed, not looking in her direction. But something about his steps, the way he held himself, felt like someone trying to remain invisible. She watched him for a few seconds longer. Her heart pulled toward him with a gentle ache. She whispered to herself, "Is it you, or am I reading this wrong?" The question burned inside her, but she still had no proof. The flowers kept appearing, and the mystery grew deeper. But what she did not know yet was that the next part of this journey would bring her closer to the truth than she ever expected. And when she learned the reason behind these flowers, her heart would change forever. The next morning began with a strange mix of calm and tension inside Sandra's chest. The third flower from the day before stayed in her mind like a soft echo. She had placed it next to the other two on her windowsill, where the early sunlight now touched all three of them. They looked peaceful together, almost like they belonged in her life. But the mystery behind them kept her thoughts turning again and again. Someone was watching her closely. Someone understood her emotions better than she expected. Someone cared, but who? As she arrived on set, she felt different. She felt more aware of every face around her, every small movement, every quiet glance. She watched the crew more closely than usual, trying to catch even the smallest hint of who might be behind the flowers. But everyone looked normal, focused on their tasks, rushing with their usual morning rhythm. No one looked suspicious. No one paused at her longer than usual. Then she saw Keanu. He was standing near the sound equipment, talking softly with one of the technicians. He wore the same calm expression he always carried, the kind that made people feel safe around him. But today her eyes followed him with extra focus. She watched the small things she had ignored before, the way he listened carefully, the way he noticed when someone dropped something and picked it up before they even asked, the way he created a sense of calm wherever he stood. For a moment she felt almost certain it was him. The timing, the silence, the gentle understanding, everything pointed to Keanu. And yet he behaved like nothing unusual had happened. She wanted to talk to him, to ask directly, but a part of her hesitated. She wondered if confronting him too soon would ruin the quiet meaning behind the gesture. Or worse, what if she was wrong and she embarrassed both of them? So she kept her questions inside, letting them circle in her heart. The day's shoot was intense again. Emotional scenes, heavy dialogues, long takes that demanded focus and vulnerability. Sandra tried her best to stay grounded, but her mind kept drifting to the thought of the flowers. During one of the breaks, she walked toward the edge of the set to sit alone for a few minutes. She rested her back against a trailer wall and let out a slow breath. That was when she heard footsteps. She looked up and saw Keanu walking toward her with 2 bottles of water. He handed one to her without saying anything at first. Then he sat down beside her, keeping a comfortable distance. They shared a silent moment before he finally spoke. "You seemed a bit troubled yesterday," he said softly. "Are you feeling better today?" His voice held the same gentle concern she had felt in the timing of the 3rd flower. She watched him, studying the lines of his face, the calmness in his eyes. She wanted to read the truth inside them, but Keanu's kindness was so natural, so effortless, it was hard to separate what was normal from what was unusual. She gave him a small smile. "I'm trying," she replied. "Yesterday was hard." He nodded slowly, looking out toward the set. "Everyone has days like that," he said. "The important thing is you didn't give up." She watched him quietly, feeling her heart soften. He always knew the right words. He always brought comfort without forcing it. She was about to ask him something when suddenly the assistant director called them back for another scene. Keanu stood up and offered her a hand. She took it, and he pulled her gently to her feet. Her fingers lingered in his for a brief second longer than necessary. He didn't pull away quickly, but he also didn't make the moment strange. It was simply warm. As he walked back to his mark, she whispered inside her mind, "If it's you, why won't you just tell me?" Hours passed, scenes continued. People moved around with busy energy, and still Sandra carried the weight of her questions. By late afternoon, she finally reached a point where she couldn't hold the curiosity inside anymore. She needed answers. She needed certainty. She stepped toward one of the production assistants and quietly asked if there were cameras around the parking areas or behind the trailers. The assistant nodded and mentioned the security team kept recordings for safety, but only a few people had access. Sandra hesitated, then said, "Would it be possible for me to see some footage from the past few nights, just the parking lot area?" The assistant paused in surprise but nodded. "I can ask security for you, but it might take a little time." She thanked him and tried to remain calm. About an hour later, the assistant returned and told her the footage was ready to view. Sandra followed him to the small security room near the far end of the lot. The room was quiet, filled with screens and monitors showing different angles of the studio grounds. The guard sat at a desk and gestured her closer. "You wanted the recordings from 2 nights ago," he said. She nodded, her heart beating slower, heavier. The guard tapped on a screen and pulled up footage from the parking lot. The camera showed rows of cars, dim lighting, and a peaceful stillness. Sandra leaned in, her breath shallow. And then she saw it. A man on a motorcycle stopped near her car. He removed his helmet, but the camera angle showed only part of his face. Yet that was enough. She recognized the way he moved, the shape of his shoulders, the calmness in his steps. He walked to her car with a white flower in his hand. Sandra's eyes widened. He opened her car door quietly, placed the flower gently on the dashboard, and stepped back with a soft smile on his face. She covered her mouth with her hand. The guard paused the frame, and the image froze. Keanu Reeves, standing beside her car, looking at the flower as if it carried something precious. Her eyes filled with warmth and disbelief. He had done it. He had done all of it. But the biggest shock was not the act itself. It was the expression on his face. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was something deeper, a quiet, personal meaning she did not understand yet. She stepped out of the room in silence, her heart racing, her thoughts spinning. Keanu had cared more deeply than she ever realized. He had watched over her, supported her, and comforted her without asking for anything in return. And yet he never told her. She needed to know why. And she needed to understand what the flowers really meant. What she didn't know was that the truth behind the gesture was more emotional than she expected, and the memory connected to it would bring her to tears. Sandra walked out of the security room with a feeling she could not name. The cool evening air touched her face, but she barely felt it. Her footsteps were slow, unsteady, as if her heart was trying to understand something her mind had not yet accepted. She kept replaying the footage in her head. Keanu walking to her car. Keanu placing the flower with gentle care. Keanu looking at it with a quiet smile before leaving without telling her. Each detail pulled her deeper into confusion, warmth, and disbelief. She had known Keanu for years. She had seen his kindness in many forms, but this felt different. This was personal, intentional, almost emotional in a way she did not fully understand. She needed answers, but she also felt afraid of what those answers might reveal. That evening, shooting continued under warm set lights. Everything around her looked normal on the surface, but inside her, nothing felt normal anymore. She kept glancing at Keanu from a distance. He looked calm, completely unaware of the world she had just stepped into. He spoke softly with crew members, rehearsed lines, adjusted props, and treated everyone with quiet respect, just like always. But now she saw him differently. Every smile he gave someone felt like a clue. Every gentle action felt like another piece of the puzzle she was trying so hard to solve. And somehow, he still said nothing. Later, during a short break, Sandra found herself sitting alone near the corner of the set. She held her hands together, waiting, thinking, trying to piece every small moment between them from the past weeks and even years. A soft breeze blew through the open stage door, carrying the faint smell of coffee from the break area. She heard footsteps behind her. She looked up and saw Keanu walking toward her slowly, holding two warm cups. He handed one to her with a soft smile. "You looked like you needed something warm," he said gently. She accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his. Even that small touch sent a quiet warmth through her hand. She studied his face carefully. He was calm, peaceful, unaware of the storm he had created inside her. Sandra took a slow sip of the coffee and tried to speak casually. "Keanu, can I ask you something?" He nodded lightly. "Anything." But when she tried to ask about the flowers, the words tangled in her throat. She hesitated, feeling her heart beating too fast. She did not want to sound emotional. She did not want her voice to tremble, so she changed the direction slightly. "Have you ever done something for someone, quietly, without telling them?" she asked. The question hung between them like a thin string. Keanu's eyes softened. He looked down for a moment, thinking. Then he replied, "Sometimes a small, quiet thing can mean more than a big, loud gesture." Her breath caught in her chest. This was too close, too on point. She tilted her head slightly. "Why not tell them?" His answer came slowly. "Because some gifts are meant to be felt, not traced back to a name." Her heart squeezed. She stared at him, trying to see if he was hiding the truth behind those gentle words. But he kept his expression calm, neutral, and warm. He took a sip of his coffee and looked toward the set. A long moment passed before she spoke again. "Keanu, were you near the parking lot last night?" He looked at her, not startled, not tense, just thoughtful. "I was leaving a little later than usual," he said softly. "Why do you ask?" She hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell him she had seen the footage. Part of her wanted to read his reaction before revealing anything. Instead, she whispered, "I thought I saw you there." His eyes held hers for a moment, calm, quiet, unreadable, then he gave a gentle nod. I was there for a bit, he said, just finishing something. The words echoed in her head. Finishing something. After Keanu walked away to change for the next scene, Sandra remained seated, her thoughts spinning faster. She knew it was him. She had seen it with her own eyes, yet he still chose silence. Not denial, not confirmation. Silence. That silence held meaning, a meaning she was now desperate to understand. Later that night, filming wrapped early. Most of the crew hurried to pack equipment, eager to go home. Sandra stood near her trailer, waiting for her assistant to hand her the next day's schedule. As she waited, she saw Keanu again. He was helping one of the younger crew members lift a heavy box into a van. No one had asked him. He just saw the struggle and stepped in like he always did. When the box was loaded, he dusted his hands and walked toward his motorcycle. This time, Sandra moved toward him with purpose. Her heart was racing, but she didn't let herself stop. "Keanu," she called softly. He turned around immediately, his expression warm as always. "Hey," he said, stepping closer. She took a slow breath. "I saw something today," she said. His face remained calm, but she saw a tiny shift, a tiny moment where his eyes softened even more. She continued, "The security footage from the parking lot." His breath paused for a moment. Not a big reaction, not shock, just a soft stillness. She stepped closer. "You placed a flower in my car, Keanu." He did not step back. He did not deny it. Instead, something unexpected happened. His eyes lowered for a brief second, as if he had been holding a secret too gently, too carefully. Then he looked at her again, quietly. "I didn't mean for you to find out," he said in a soft voice, barely above a whisper. Sandra felt her heart drop and lift at the same time. "Why?" she asked. "Why didn't you want me to know?" He exhaled slowly, as if releasing something he had held for a long time. "Because it wasn't about being noticed," he said. "It was about giving you something you once gave me." Her breath stopped. "Gave you when?" Keanu looked down, gently touched the strap of his bag, and said, "You don't remember, but I do." A quiet chill moved through her. She whispered, "What did I give you, Keanu?" His eyes grew softer, more emotional, and for the first time she saw the depth behind his silence. But before he could answer, a loud call came from across the lot. Someone from the crew needed him for a quick pickup shot. He turned slightly, then looked back at Sandra with an expression that held both warmth and something unspoken. "I'll tell you after this scene," he said quietly. She nodded slowly. She had no idea the truth he was about to share would reach so far into their past, that it would bring tears she never expected. And the real meaning behind the flowers was something she had forgotten but he had carried for years. The set lights were dimming when Sandra watched Keanu walk away to film the small pickup shot the crew needed. She stood near her trailer, unable to move, unable to calm the storm inside her chest. His words kept repeating in her mind like a soft echo she could not silence. "You once gave me something, you don't remember, but I do." What had she given him? When? Why did he remember it? And why would he return it now? In the form of flowers. The mystery tightened around her heart, filling her with a strange mix of fear, affection, and overwhelming curiosity. She waited near the trailer steps, hoping he would finish quickly, hoping she would not lose her courage to ask him the truth. The evening grew darker. Crew members packed equipment, joked among themselves, and slowly left. The director waved goodbye. The makeup team walked away with bags full of brushes and palettes. One by one, the noise faded into silence until the set felt almost empty. Keanu finished his short shot at last and walked toward her under the soft glow of the studio lights. His steps were calm, steady, peaceful, but his eyes held something deeper now, something he had kept hidden for years. When he reached her, neither of them spoke at first. A quiet breeze moved between them, carrying the soft scent of dust and studio lights. Sandra looked at him with a fragile mix of confusion and warmth. Finally, she whispered, "Please tell me, why the flowers? What did I give you?" Keanu looked down for a moment, gathering the words as if they were gentle memories he had protected long enough. When he looked at her again, his eyes were softer than she had ever seen them. "It was years ago," he began quietly. "A day I was struggling more than anyone knew." Sandra held her breath. She had never seen him look this vulnerable. "It was during one of our early films," he continued. "I was quiet that week, not myself, trying to handle things alone, and you you noticed. Her eyes widened slightly. She tried to remember, but the memory stayed blurry, hidden behind the rush of old scenes and long days. He continued, one evening after a long shoot, you came to my trailer. You didn't ask what was wrong. You didn't push me to talk. You just handed me a small white flower. Sandra blinked hard, her mind trying to reach that distant moment. You told me, he said softly, that even when days feel heavy, something simple and gentle can remind a person they are not alone. Her heart tightened. Slowly, the memory began to return. She had almost forgotten that evening. She remembered seeing him tired, quiet, weighing something heavy inside. She had taken a flower from a nearby vase and given it to him without thinking, hoping it would help even a little. She whispered, I forgot I did that. Keanu smiled softly, but there was emotion behind the smile. I never forgot, he said. That flower meant more to me than you realized. It stayed in my trailer for weeks. It reminded me someone cared without asking anything in return. Sandra felt her chest warm and ache at the same time. She had offered him something small, and yet he had carried it like something precious. He continued gently, when I saw you struggling these past days, quietly holding so much inside, I wanted to return that kindness. Not in the same words, not by talking, but in the same way you gave it to me. She looked down, her eyes slowly filling with tears. So you left the flowers to comfort me, the way I comforted you. Keanu nodded. Yes, but I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. I just wanted to give you something that asks for nothing in return, something quiet, something sincere. His honesty struck her with a depth she was not prepared for. She took a step closer, her voice trembling slightly. Keanu, you could have told me. He shook his head softly. Sometimes quiet kindness speaks louder, and I didn't want this to become something complicated. I just wanted you to feel supported. The simplicity of his words brought warmth to her eyes until they shimmered. She wiped them gently, trying not to let her emotions spill too quickly. You helped me more than you know, she whispered. Those flowers came exactly when I needed them. Keanu lowered his head almost shyly. You helped me first. Their silence now felt warm, gentle, full of understanding. Sandra reached into her bag and pulled out all 3 flowers she had carefully brought with her that morning. They looked delicate in her hands, glowing softly under the studio lights. I kept them, she said, every one of them. Keanu looked at them with a quiet expression, a mixture of relief and something deeper, respect, gratitude, and a small hint of vulnerability. Thank you, he said softly. She smiled, a warm, emotional smile that reached her eyes. No, thank you. You helped me remember something important. That small kindness, even tiny moments, can heal more than we realize. Keanu nodded, and you helped me remember that years ago. They stood there, both carrying a memory they finally shared again. The flowers were no longer a mystery. They were a circle of kindness, something given long ago, returned at the exact moment it was needed the most. As they walked toward the exit together, Sandra looked at him with gentle warmth and said, Keanu, this became one of the sweetest moments I've ever had with you. He smiled quietly, the same soft smile she had seen in the security footage. I'm glad, he replied, because it came from a place of pure respect. They stepped out into the night side by side, the flowers resting gently in Sandra's hands, carrying a meaning that would stay with both of them forever.